You're listening to Packers Talk Network. PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans, and we just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and nonsense. We're sticking to real football. We're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season and the preseason, sorting through all the drama and the rumor of the offseason. If y'all want to support the podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all the socials and subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. Those things help us out tremendously. We really appreciate it. Only take you a few seconds. And before we get started, a few words from our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers games tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Good evening, Tim. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, Miles. I'm doing well. Coming off our first victory of the season, though it's preseason.
Hear, hear. A victory is a victory.
First of many, hopefully.
Yes.
We'll take it. Preseason week 1. The team looked great. How are you?
Man, I'm just happy to see the Packers competitive against another team on the football field. It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to see what's ahead.
It feels like it's been a long time. So it's just great to see them back on the field, no matter that it's preseason, whatever the result was, however they looked. It was just great to see them out there playing a game.
Heck yes, sir. Yeah, so it was fun to see them win, fun to see them play as well as they did. Yep. Fun to see the offense essentially just pick up right where it left off. Wicks looking as smooth as he can. Love just hitting him in stride. It's just beautiful. Just art in football form out there against the Browns. So I was very, very, very excited to see that. Had a good time.
Yeah, it was cool to see. And I mean, if you wanted to see the starters, you better not. You better been there from the beginning because
Hope you didn't blink.
Play very long. Exactly. Offense was 3 plays and an out.
Fun fact, the touchdown to Wicks was Wicks's only snap of the game. He had one snap, 100% touchdown ratio.
He made it count.
He did make it count. So, yes, very, very fun to see that. Great way to start the preseason, even though it is the preseason. This is all we got. So we got to enjoy what we got. We got to do everything we can with what we got. So we'll overanalyze it, I guess, a little bit here. But it's just nice to have football back, right? Like just seeing other games happen, see, teams come together, just kind of getting a feel for what it's going to be like on the weekends now that we've got football back. I'm excited for college football. I love that feel on Saturdays. You wake up and you just know that there's a bunch of good games to watch. So I'm pumped, man. Pumped for real football to be back.
Football season is here.
It is here. It is here. So, in this preseason week 1, did anybody exceed your expectations, Tim?
I thought there were some really good performances. I don't know about exceeding, but I feel better about the safeties. I mean, it's everything, the young safeties in particular. It's better. Everything that we were hearing throughout training camp showed up on the field with the way Javon Bullard and Evan Williams played. So it was great to see them. I mean, Absolutely. They made plays. They were flying towards the line of scrimmage, which is something that we haven't seen safeties do in a long time in Green Bay. And they were making plays on the ball. Evan Williams caused the fumble, and they were blitzing. They were setting the edge. They were coming in and crashing against the run. It was what we've been looking for the last however many years it's been since we had a safety that was able to do things like that.
Oh, man.
And they showed the versatility. I mean, playing in the slot, playing in the box, playing deep. So, yeah, the 2 young safeties in particular, Evan Williams and Javon Bullard, and even Anthony Johnson Jr.
I was about to say, don't go sleeping on my guy AJJ here.
So, yeah, they absolutely were impressive, and it backed up what we've been hearing throughout training camp from everybody on the scene watching them day in and day out. They backed it up. Also want to give a shout out on the other side of the ball to the offensive line, just maybe in particular the interior of that offensive line. I thought a guy that we've talked about since they drafted him, starting to come on a little bit, Jacob Monk, looked good. He's been playing left guard, right guard, center, showing that versatility. He's starting to really make a name for himself, moving up the depth chart. That happened, the end of last week and then into the preseason game. And he's a physical dude. He played the most snaps of anyone on the offense. He's shown the versatility that he needs for this offensive line that they like. And even Sean Ryan, I thought, had a pretty good game. Being able to play center, being able to play left guard, right guard. He's got to be able to do that. He's still in competition at right guard, though. It looks like Jordan Morgan's going to be that guy. But Jordan Morgan's new injury lingers longer. It opens up the door for Ryan. If not, Ryan can be that next guy up off the bench, backing up all three spots on the interior. So I thought Monk, Ryan, they did a real nice job. And we'll talk about the offensive tackles, the depth there. But, yeah, to me, it was – if you want to look defensively, I really like to play the safeties, and I like to play a Monk and Ryan inside on the offensive line.
Yeah, and just to add some context to that, and I'll always throw this disclaimer in there. We do like to look at PFF. We do not hold PFF as the end-all, be-all, holy grail of ratings and performance and all that. But it's a good metric to kind of compare apples to apples as best you can. And make some of these things objective. But, yeah, I mean, looking at that battle between Sean Ryan and Jacob Monk there, Sean Ryan did have a better graded game. He graded out at 66.7, which is pretty good. And it's not necessarily on the same scale as Madden ratings. So, if that's what you're thinking, it's not like what a 66 in Madden would be. That would be pretty bad. No, 66.7 is pretty good. Pretty good game. And then Jacob Monk had a 63.9. Not a terrible game. Not something that you're probably writing home about. Like Dontavian Wicks got a 94.3, best graded player on the offense. Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be some ways that we can track some of these things. Watch who's doing what. How did they grade out? Sometimes you'll see a guy, play well and then grade out poorly, and that's where we kind of take these things with a grain of salt. Like, trust your eyes. If you saw a guy play well, he played well. Don't let his PFF grade be a problem. But yeah, I thought there were some good things here. I thought Jacob Monk getting the most offensive snaps was a big thing to me that stood out. Yeah. That definitely happened for a reason. You know what I mean? You definitely are trying to see what you have in that guy, where it's going to be. And then, just from what we've seen so far, there's some talk last week about Morgan playing at right guard. Some people maybe aren't happy with that. Maybe some don't care. We were saying Morgan playing right guard is probably your best case scenario in 2024. That means your tackles are your tackles, right? There's no question who your tackles are. They're the guys who were playing borderline all-pro level at the end of last season. Jenkins at left guard, and then obviously Myers at center would be the next place that might be up for grabs or up for competition. And Monk is active in both of those spots, right? Right guard and center. So I would think, if he's going to crack the top 5, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does, it's got to probably happen at center. And his center snaps I thought were pretty good. From what I got to watch, he definitely had some things you like to see. The thing that stands out to me the most about Monk, though, if you watch him, he plays angry. Yeah, he plays with an attitude, man. There were a few times where he's throwing guys down to the ground and stuff. Man, that fired me up.
And I think Luke Butkus, the offensive line coach, his quote today was he was ready to rip somebody's lips off before the game. Never heard that. Rip somebody's lips off? I mean,
I've heard a lot. I can't say I've heard that.
That's rip somebody's head off. I've heard that. Rip somebody's lips off. I don't know, but whatever. Man. I guess he's an intense dude, and he showed some physicality when he was out there.
Hell yeah. No, that was one thing that stood out to me very, very strongly. And that, that doesn't always show up in your gradings. That's why we say take what you see on PFF with a grain of salt. They're grading what they can. Sometimes they know what the assignment is. Sometimes they don't. But things like him playing with an attitude of ripping people's lips off, that's not just going to show up in your grades. So, that was something that I really enjoyed. He does. He plays with attitude, and I think that's something that can win him that job. Myers, obviously is the incumbent center. If he's going to lose the job, it's because he's not as explosive and he's not as urgent as Monk. Monk definitely looks like he can move better than Myers. He's able to kind of pivot and hook a lot better than Myers, it seems like to me. Sometimes, when we're watching Myers, we were being kind of critical of him last season. It seemed like his mistakes were in a lack of athleticism a lot of times. He was outmatched. He was caught off balance. It wasn't necessarily he was doing the wrong thing, but he wasn't capable of doing the right thing. And that is where I think Monk can get him. Early on, it's Myers' job to lose because he's the guy who knows what to do. Monk's still going to be figuring out assignments. What do I do here? Where do I go there? But once that gap closes, man, I really do see a guy in Monk that, we got a small sample size, but he looks like a guy that could beat out Myers for that center job.
I think down the road, I think it's Myers' job for now, for sure. And he's had kind of a quiet camp, but I don't think that's also a bad thing. I mean, he hasn't stood out maybe in any way, but I think he's at least been consistent for them. I don't think Myers beats him out early in the season, but it could be something down the line this year and certainly going into next season because this is the last year for Myers under contract too. So, yeah, long-term, Jacob Monk could be their center. I don't think it's going to happen right away, but he's at least shown the ability that if they need him right away early in the season for, injury or performance, something up front, he can step in there. So I feel pretty good right now with that interior offensive line group. The depth there, better than I did at the start of training camp. I think the tackle depth is another question, but I think at least in interior between Monk and Sean Ryan's been able to, play some solid football right now throughout camp at center. I feel much better about them inside than I did coming into camp. I think there are some question marks, not only, who's going to be at right guard, but the depth behind them. And I think the depth's definitely improved there.
Yeah, I definitely think it has. And I'm encouraged by what we're seeing from Sean Ryan too. Him not necessarily going away quietly, and he's fighting for that job. And so, yeah, I mean, that's great to see because, again, when you get competition, that breeds success and everybody wins.
Absolutely.
So, you definitely want to see that. You don't want to see any of these guys fold when it comes to competition. And so, overall, I'm very, very pleased with where the interior line is, the O-line just in general, and how they looked.
And I think – I'm sorry, I was just going to say – I think we can also flip that to the other side of the line, the defensive line, because the way they've been throughout training camp, and I thought early on, okay, it's one thing to do it without pads on, and then it's another thing to do it. Zach Tom's not there, and they're trying to figure out right guard. But they did it on Saturday too, and I know Cleveland didn't have their starting tackles in there, but Lucas Van Ness and Devontae Wyatt were awesome in that game. I mean, they were attacking, blowing up the offensive line. They were so good, especially Van Ness. But Wyatt was right there too. It shows you, I mean, we know Rashawn Gary's going to be really good this year. At least I think he's going to be really good.
Oh, yeah.
Preston's going to be his normal, consistent self, what we get. But it shows you the next guys up, Van Ness, and what we hope Wyatt can be. Carl Brooks, too. Kobe Wooden had a sack in that game. They have some depth up front, and Van Ness was awesome against the Browns. And the whole system is still a question mark, and we don't know if it's really going to work out. But just this attacking mindset, just get into the backfield, don't think, don't wait, don't hold up at the line of scrimmage, just go. Right. I think really fits with the personnel that they have, and you can just see it looks like Wyatt's more comfortable, and it certainly looks like Van Ness is a lot more comfortable in this scheme than they were in the previous scheme. And both those guys stood out defensively on Saturday.
No doubt. Yeah, and R. Showers jumping in with us. Good to see you, R. LVN, applied a lot of pressure. He agrees with you. No doubt, and that is what you want to see. You want to see your first round picks start to take those steps. You want to see them look more comfortable. So yeah, that all thumbs up, all upside there. Very excited to see those things. Matthew Tan jumping in with us again. Good to see you, Matthew. Glad they beat the Cleveland Clowns. Hey, there we go. Let's go. I'll double down on that. Glad to see they beat them Cleveland Clowns. But yeah, and here's another good point by R. We'll get there in just a second. I did want to bring up before we move on to maybe some less than pleasing performances, maybe more disappointing stuff. Who exceeded expectations. While we were talking about O-line, I don't want to leave out some folks who actually, as far as PFF is concerned, we'll see if this continues to be a pattern, but these folks stood out and maybe weren't expected to. But Andre Dillard had an 88.3 pass block grade in this game. That's pretty stinking good. I believe that's elite level as far as PFF goes. And then another one that stood out, Royce Newman, an 86.3 pass block grade. So he, maybe he's not going away. And then shout out to Bo Melton, who had a 90.9 run blocking grade. So always want to shout out the receivers who were doing that gritty run blocking work. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, I thought Bo had a rough game, though. He 2 or 3 drops.
He was the worst graded offensive player, but he did block his ass off.
Okay, threw some good blocks. He just didn't catch the ball. So, yeah. I think, look, I'll cut Bo Melton a little bit of a break because we saw what he could be the end of last season. I still think he's okay. It was one bad game, and I expect him to recover and be fine against Denver going forward. But another guy who had a great game, Grant DeBose, continues to stand out. He's been making plays every day in training camp, and he took it going away. Yeah, he took it into the game. And I know the debate is DeBose or Malik Heath. Maybe Bo Melton opened the door. I think it's too soon for that. I think Bo Melton's, fine, but he can't string that bad performance along. Like, he's got to put it by him and get back to the level that he was at, because Grant DeBose is coming on, and we know they really like Malik Heath from last season. So, shout out Grant DeBose, who had carried over the practice performance into the game, which is what you have to do if you want to make the team. Especially as a number 6 or number 5 receiver. He was really good again. Really, the catch along the sidelines, dragging his toes, phenomenal.
Yeah.
So he keeps making plays, and the pressure's on Malik Heath and Bo Melton at the bottom of the receiver roster.
Yep, I totally agree, and it's a hot race. It's got to be the hottest receiver 5, receiver 6 race in the entire league.
Probably.
So we'll see how that plays out. Are they forced to keep 7? Is there a scenario where you can do that?
I don't.
Probably
think so.
not, right? Because you got too many running backs, too many tight ends that need some love too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, just again, giving you guys some ideas on these PFF grades and how they came in. Your second highest graded player was none other than the Jordan Love. With a 90.3 grade. So not much to explain there. He looked good. Julian Hicks seems to be making a little bit of noise in this receiver battle. So, he's probably a pretty long shot, the longest, but, third highest graded offensive player of the game. Not bad. Not going to be overlooked.
Practice squad candidate.
Yeah. So then you got DeBose. And I did want to call out Michael Pratt. Had a good rating, but Sean Clifford didn't have as bad of a grade as you might think. I think some folks were a little bit down on his performance. His grade was pretty good.
I thought he played a really good game, and he had 2 throwaways that they were running out the clock at the end of the half for. He had a spike, and then he had some drops from Bo Melton. So those aren't his fault. Yeah, right. That hurts his completion percentage. But I thought he looked pretty good, and he was kind of, the gamer that we've talked about. He threw a lot of picks in training camp, but he's kind of gotten better over the last week or so, and he showed up in the game like Matt Flynn always seemed to do.
Yeah,
I think he's kind of the same quarterback in a way. So I thought Clifford played a solid game.
Yeah, the QB2 battle's interesting. That's something that's going to heat up.
And do they keep 3? Because that's going to factor in, how many receivers they keep, how many tight ends and offensive linemen. Like, it all factors in, but they might have to keep 3.
Yeah. I think in this game, the way it is, you can't take for granted a decent QB, much less a good QB. But yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. But at least it's a good battle, right? At least we're not sitting here talking about who's the worst or the better of two evils, lesser of two evils, I should say. But yeah, so there's some interesting football there ahead for those guys. Emmanuel Wilson is another one not going away. He's like, I see you drafted a running back. I get it, but I'm pretty good too. So interesting to see him and track how he does going forward. But yeah, and we won't go through the rest of them. That was kind of the top part of the offensive PFF grades. So that's where the good performers would be. Obviously, there's a lot of names I didn't read. There was a lot of guys that didn't get a ton of snaps. Watson didn't get a ton of snaps. Musgrave, Dobbs. So there's not a whole lot to take from probably some of those higher up positions anyway. But what we saw was good, so let's take it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, on the other side of things, who maybe didn't hold up their end of the deal? Who are we concerned about right now after 1 week?
So I know you mentioned the PFF grades, and that's fine, but I still have concerns about that offensive tackle depth. Like, there's just nobody stepping up between Telfort and Dillard and Caleb Jones. Like, if they had to play a real game tomorrow, who's the next man up? Who's your third offensive tackle, the swing guy? It's got to be.
Might still be Jordan.
It's Jordan Morgan or it's Ellen Jenkins.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't trust Dillard or Caleb Jones or Kadeem Telfort. None of those guys were stepping up. And I know it's not a starting position. And this team's pretty well set at the starters. I mean, there's really not a competition other than maybe the safety next to McKinney that's open right now. But your third tackle could be pretty critical depending on what happens. And I don't feel good about any of those guys. I think there's still some time, and certainly somebody can still step up and take a hold of that position. But right now, it's concerning. Like, I don't particularly like any of them at this point. I guess I kind of like Telford a little more because he's at least younger and he has more of an ability to build up to that where they can coach him up, whereas Dillard's been in the league for a few years, and this is kind of what he is. He doesn't seem like he's improving under the Packers coaching. So that's concerning. And Caleb Jones is now in his third year at the Packers. Like, this is it, dude. You got to start making your push now. So hopefully they do as the preseason goes along here. But right now I'm a little concerned about what they have between, behind Walker and Zach Tom at the moment.
Yeah, and that's really what these next couple preseason games are for. Yeah. It's not, I think in this first part of training camp and now through your family night game and one preseason game, you've seen enough from the ones on the offensive side of the ball, at least, to say, okay, we know what we got. We know kind of who's going to settle at those positions. Let's work on the ones behind them. So hopefully we get some good answers over the next couple weeks on those questions. But you're right. Yeah, there's still definitely a concern about the depth at tackle. And, the comments are overwhelmingly shouting about somebody else. But ours got it for us. AJ better get it together. They're going to keep him on pass blocking alone. Doubtful. He better hope the USC kid stays hurt. Now, we're not hoping for anybody to stay hurt now. But, I understand what you're saying there, are. And, yeah, I mean, it does seem like A.J. Dillon is reverting to former self of 2023 and kind of what he's been so far this season. And everybody's, I think, expected him to take a step forward now, being the leader in that room, kind of from a standpoint of a guy who's been here. Obviously, Josh Jacobs is RB1. But, yeah, he's a vet now. He's had some time to improve his physique a little bit, right? He dropped some fat. He, looks like the Hulk. Got him some fresh new teeth. Guy's looking good. He's got a good glow up that he's done, I think is what the kids call it. But yeah, so it just doesn't seem like that's translated to play. And I didn't get to watch his snaps, but from what I read on social media, I didn't need to. It didn't look like it was very impressive. And what did you see from A.J. Dillon?
Well, he had, 2 or 3 straight runs where it was short yardage. You needed a yard to pick up, and he didn't get it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all on him. The offensive line gave him nowhere to run. There were no holes. And today in the press conferences that LaFleur did, and then the offensive coaching staff all had their press. They all kind of excused A.J. Dillon and put it more on the run blocking than on Dillon, which, okay, fine. I don't think they're going to call him out anyway.
Yeah.
So the run blocking was not good in that situation. But he's also a 240-pound, 245-pound running back. Get a damn yard. Yeah. And this is too much of what we've already seen from him. And the run blocking wasn't great for Emmanuel Wilson either. Emmanuel Wilson made some plays on his own.
Right.
A.J. Dillon didn't do that. Now, he only played 7 snaps. Emmanuel Wilson played a lot more than that. I think he played 22.
Still.
But it kind of felt like this is the same A.J. Dillon that we've been seeing, not the A.J. Dillon that we've been hearing looks better at training camp. I don't want to kill him just based on 7 snaps in the game and the run blocking not being good for him. I think it's a little too soon for that. But it wasn't a good first impression. It's kind of, like I said, it's more of what we've seen from him the last couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, we're probably going to see him a lot more against Denver this week, and we'll talk about that, how they're not going to be, playing the starters this week. So we probably get a pretty good showing from Dillon this week. But, yeah, Emmanuel Wilson, he was able to make some plays on his own, whereas Dillon couldn't do that. This Marshawn Lloyd injury kind of makes it a little cloudy there at running back, because how long is he going to be out? It's his second injury. Maybe he's even a candidate to go on injured reserve. So then that definitely, frees up a roster spot for Dillon and probably Wilson as well. But yeah, it wasn't a great showing from A.J. Dillon in this first preseason game after, we had heard all these good things from him from training camp. So definitely needs to improve, because whoever that number 2 running back is going to play a pretty good amount, because we know how the Packers like to rotate their backs. They don't want to run anybody down and tire him out. So he needs to be better. He's
got a unique skill set to, Josh Jacobs or Marshawn Lloyd or even Emmanuel Wilson. He's their bigger guy. There's just certain things you want to see him be able to do. And when he's not able to do those things, you're just like, well, why not just another guy then? And to put into context, I'm not a big fan of just kind of looking at box scores and making judgments on that. But in this case, we're saying, well, he didn't have good run blocking. Let's take a look at what the other running backs had, or what they accomplished, we'll say. So, yeah, Emmanuel Wilson got 13 carries. He had 5.2 yards a carry and got a touchdown, had a long run of 23 yards. Julian Hicks gets 1 carry for 14 yards. Let's see, here's the next running back. Jarvion Howard goes for 5.5 yards a carry on 8 carries. Let's see here. Marshawn Lloyd got 8 yards on his 1 carry. Josh Jacobs got 7 on his 1 carry. Merriweather, who was, I guess, down there with A.J. Dillon in terms of production, had 3.5 yards a carry. So, when you're A.J. Dillon and you get four carries and you get a half yard a carry after everybody else did better than you, it's just not good.
No.
And you say, oh, the run blocking was bad on this. Like, so what? Like, get better than a half a yard,
Right. And it just, for a big back, he just doesn't run big. Like, there are times you just have to run some dudes over, and he should be doing that. And it's more of the same, it seems like, with him. Again, it's one game and it's a very small sample size. I think we got to give it a little more time, but
of course, we're not making cuts this week right now.
No, he looked like the same A.J. Dillon we've been seeing for the last couple of years.
So that is disheartening, but if that's our low point, then I'd say we did pretty good this last weekend. But yeah, so AJ Dillon definitely disappointing for me. The tight ends were pretty quiet, right? Didn't hear from Musgrave, Kraft. I believe the other guys got some snaps, but yeah, a little disappointed that the tight ends are off to a quiet start. I'd like to see them get fired up and flex some of their ability, but we're starting to split hairs a little bit. So
yeah,
the only other one that comes to mind for me is, and I didn't even get to really put a lot of eyes on the film for this, but the linebackers seem to have kind of a quiet day. So there's a lot that you want to see coming up, but as far as are you concerned? Man, I'm not really concerned about any of this, to be honest with you. This is stuff that it's not perfect, but nothing. You can't expect everything to be perfect. There's a lot going well for the Packers right now to begin with. So yeah, I mean, I'd say my concerns are pretty small.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the number 2 or number 3 running back, and who the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th offensive linemen are, and that kind of who's the 4th tight end, like, okay, sure, but like we're not trying to figure out like, oh my God, who's going to rush the passer, who's going to be starting corners, who's going to be your left tackle, like,
yeah,
all that stuff's, we know who that's going to be, and there's a lot of teams out there that got multiple problems in their starting lineups. And for the Packers, we're kind of like trying to figure out like, okay, who are the depth guys that are making this team? Like that's for this point after one preseason game, I think that's pretty good. Certainly those depth guys will play roles at some point during a 17-game season. You need everybody, but we're not like in panic mode trying to find out like, who our top contributors are going to be. Not in any way. So I think they're in a pretty good spot right now, especially in comparison to the rest of the NFL, really.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. And I'm down here in the DFW area, the Cowboys just got their receiver 1 back, so they're just now getting to that point in camp. So there's a lot of folks behind the Packers right now. The Packers are off to a great start, in my opinion. I'll tell you who I'm not concerned about, our showers, is our boy Christian Watson. 2 more injury scares from your boy Watson this week. Over-under on games finished this season. 7 max. You say 7. I think he's getting them all. And not worried about the injury scares from this last week. Football's a violent game. That's just what happens. He got up. He popped up. He's good. I just think there was a lot of those guys on offense that they didn't get a lot of snaps. I don't think that was anything to do with his injuries.
Right. He was a starter. They took him out quick. It has nothing to do with the injuries. And I think some of the injury stuff was a little overblown by the media watching every move because he's been hurt in the past. Like,
right.
Give the guy some time. Give him a chance. Like, he's been out there every day. Like, what do you want?
No, he ours got jokes. But no, I'm not worried about him. Again, it's a violent game. I do think that the media is overhyping everything about him right now as far as injuries go, and that's where I'm just like, that's fine. Let it be. But what I see from him, is a guy who looks confident. I didn't get to listen to his whole interview with Rich Eisen earlier this week, but I was trying to and got distracted. But yeah, I mean, he sounds like a dude with his head on straight. He sounds like, he's within this whole chemistry that this offense and this team is building. So I want to see what he's got, and I think it's fair to be, cautiously optimistic or even skeptical or whatever, kind of protect your fan emotions. I get it.
I understand.
A lot of us do that. There's a lot of fan decisions that have to be made in order to protect the energy. But when I look at Christian Watson and I see the tools, the physical tools that he has, he is somebody that I've wanted to see in Green Bay for a long time. As far as just the physical abilities, that large Megatron type receiver, you just haven't had a lot of that in Green Bay. We've had good receivers, right? Really good receiver play, no doubt about it. But none of them have been that just physically dominant presence. And Christian Watson, with his size, speed, explosive combination, I want to see that at its max potential. So I am ruthlessly rooting for that, and I am okay with anybody who doesn't think that that will happen. It's totally fine because I will be here with receipts when it does.
Well said. I agree with you. And I'll just add to that, his speed and his ability makes a huge difference for their offense. And if you don't believe that, go back and watch the tape when he was in the lineup last year and how teams defended the offense and when he was not in there. It's a huge difference. Even if he's not catching passes, it's a big difference.
The defense has to account for him. They if he's on the field, they have to know where he is at all times. Yeah, and that's we talked about it last year when it was happening, right? There was all these guys are getting separation. Jaden Reed's getting separation, Wick's getting separation, Dobbs getting separation, and then Watson was on and off the field, but when he's on the field, he's commanding more double coverage than any other receiver in the league. And he's taking guys deep. He's sucking up coverage so that all these other guys can get that separation. Now imagine you got that, but you've also got Musgrave. You've also got, the running back crew that you have to deal with. There's a lot that defenses have to deal with. Oh, by the way, the other guys that, that were not even mentioned, and they're pretty good too. Dobbs, Reed, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what gets really, really exciting to me is like just seeing that alone is huge, and there's a lot that you can scheme with that, right? You can use him as a decoy in a lot of ways, and then in the fourth quarter, whenever the defense is just gassed, you've got one of the fastest guys in the league who's fresh, ready to go, and he's just going to blow past people, and you obviously see that Wicks was able to do that. Not to knock him, but Christian Watson is definitely faster than Wicks. So if Wicks is burning dudes off the go, and he was against the safety, it was just a good matchup on the Packers' part there. But
absolutely,
Watson is going to. I mean, I hate to bring Tyreek Hill into this, but that's the next best comparison when you talk about speed. Like the difference between he and Tyreek Hill speed-wise is very small, very, very small. So just a lot to be excited about there. A lot to root for. I hear you are. You make good points. You got good jokes too. Those are funny. I'm not going to post them, but yeah, I want to see it. I want to see that full potential on the field and what that looks like. So we'll see. I'm getting a little bit distracted there from the are you concerned topic, but I am not concerned about Christian Watson. I'll say that for sure. Did we miss anybody here? Let's about our concerns. Draft is concerning. We're not going to go there. It's too early for that. It was mostly A.J. Dillon, right? I mean, I think that's probably the consistent concern is A.J. Dillon. But otherwise, a lot of exciting things. And I didn't really we mentioned him a little bit, but Evan Williams and the safeties, man, so much fun. That is going to be fun to watch that unfold this season. And maybe that is a good segue into our next topic about this next week coming up with the Broncos, the joint practice, and then the preseason game. We're not going to have starters, but what we're going to get to see this week, in the joint practices, and then a little bit of what we'll see in the game. We'll learn more. We're going to learn more about the safety rotation, the running back rotation, all that. But yeah, what are you watching for this week?
So, I mean, I think the big one is what happens in a joint practice, because that's almost the preseason game for the starters. And then there's a second preseason game for the 2s and the 3s and the 4s in the lineup. I think as far as the game itself, the quarterback battle is going to be huge. I don't know how they're going to split up, if they each get a half, or if Clifford gets a little more time than Pratt, or Pratt gets who knows. But I think that's going to go a long way. I think it'll be interesting, the offensive line rotation, as far as not only who starts, but who's going to play multiple positions and who plays where. And then I think, and this could go into one of those, questions we had earlier, like what's kind of been a surprise or a standout. We didn't even touch on it, but the cornerbacks, like I think the depth there is better than what I was expecting. And, we're not going to see Jair again this week. Hopefully he's back from whatever the personal matter is and can practice, but he definitely won't play in a game. I wouldn't think Stokes is going to. They'll need him to, right? Yeah. I don't think Stokes will even play in a game because he's a starter now. But I think the depth guys, like Ballantyne has been pretty solid. Robert Rochelle had a nice game against Cleveland, and I know he
Top
was
graded defensive player.
yeah, and like nobody's going to talk about him, but he was on the roster last year. They picked him up late in the year. Good special teams player. Like he may force them to keep a 6 cornerback just because of his special teams ability. Like, yeah, you don't want him starting for you. You don't want him playing a lot of snaps, but special teams is going to get some guys on this roster. He might be one of them. Kalen King has had his moments and certainly looks better than a 7th round pick. So expect to see a lot of him against Denver. And will he be inside only, or they're going to put him outside? It'll be a good look at him playing nickel. But I just think overall the depth at a corner is a little better than I was expecting. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think offensively it's the quarterback battle and the offensive line rotation. To me, defensively, it's more so like what they're going to do in the secondary. I would think we're still going to see Williams and Bullard, but we're not going to see McKinney. But it's another opportunity for the rookies and Anthony Johnson Jr. And then it's a chance for the cornerback depth. So, yeah, I don't know what Denver's plans are as far as who they're going to play. I think they're going to start Bo Nix, the rookie at quarterback, but I don't know if they're playing all their starters too. And that would certainly be interesting if they play their starters and we're playing our subs, because then we'll really get a good look at just how good the depth is on the Packers if they can go toe to toe with another team's first unit.
Heck yeah, man. Yeah, that's always good to see if you can get a look like that. I would imagine they'll probably sync up what they're doing based on the joint practice in the week.
I think so too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm watching for that. I'm watching for that continuity in the secondary. Let's see how these guys roll into this next week. Does Evan Williams look the same? Does he take a step back at all? I'll say though, it's been so much fun to watch. Bullard looks explosive. He looks like the part that you were hoping to see. And everybody keeps, associating Evan Williams with Micah Hyde, and it's hard not to, right? He's the 3-3. He's just very, very similar play style, and we were talking about that early on when we started talking about Evan Williams. But, yeah, I really am interested to see how they do this next week. The Broncos, they've got their own stuff they're trying to figure out, so I don't know who will be tested and how, but they'll be tested, right? We'll get another look at some of these guys. Kalen King is one that I'm most excited about, I think, as far as depth goes in the secondary. He's hitting on another 7th round pick. Holy crap, man. That would be exceptional. Just unthinkable, really. But yeah, so that's what I'm watching for. I'm watching for the receiver battle too, man. Like the fact that you basically got a similar depth battle going on over at receiver. The top of the depth chart is pretty well set, but you could go 8 down as far as the guys that we got to talk about. And you can't keep 8. That's for damn sure. And there's a couple of those guys that are not going to hang out on waivers. So. It's going to be very interesting. I almost wonder if at some point Goot has to make a trade instead of just letting one of these guys walk, or even 2 of them, because you got some legitimate guys here contending. I mean, some of the replays that I was looking at of DeBose, he was giving me very strong Greg Jennings vibes. Just the way he was moving, the way that he was that sideline catch that had Greg Jennings written all over it. So that I'm watching for that receiver battle, man. I love that that's happening, and I want to see the tight ends get involved. I know the starters might not get going in the game, but I really would love to see Musgrave and Kraft get involved this week, make some plays, and again flex some of their ability, because right there, you could have the best tight end tandem in the league, and we really haven't even gotten to talk about them yet much this preseason.
No, Kraft has been dealing with the injury, and he's just now getting back, so I give him a little bit of break. But it's been quiet for Musgrave so far. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about, but I'd like to start seeing some reports on him making plays all over the field in training camp again, like we saw last year, but. It's early, and they got a lot of guys that can get the ball, so it's hard to get them all involved, but they will.
Absolutely. So, Yeah, I mean, when it comes to this week too, it's kind of fun. It's like an extended preseason game, right? So you get a few of the joint practices. Is it 2 joint practices, 2 days?
Just one.
Just the one day. Okay, one practice, one game. So, but yeah, I think it'll be. I think it'll be fun. We're learning something new almost every day right now about this team. Our Showers jumping in here. Sadly, Malik would be a perfect Steeler, and they have a receiver deficit. Oh man, you're already shipping off Malik. All right, hey, you know what? You're not wrong, but he's the bully in the room. Like, I want that guy. I want the bully in the room to stay in the room. I might consider moving Bo Melton, but he's kind of a fan favorite, so we might get some hate mail for saying something like that. But no, we got another. I got a fellow Titan jumping in here, Cam, Texas Toast. What's up, Cam? Thanks for jumping in, man. Good to see you. He played at UWO with me. Was also one of the athletes who came up under Coach Brown. We got to interview Coach Brown on this podcast a few weeks ago, and he just recently retired. Congrats, Coach, if you're listening.
Nice.
He didn't get to break that news on our podcast. He was holding that secret close to the chest, but that's okay. Yeah, no, I'm excited for some of these battles we got heating up right now. And then who's RB2? Who's going to take the running back 2 position?
Yeah,
I'm really looking at that because Emmanuel Wilson's going to have something to say about it. Like if it's not him, you're going to have to tell him that.
Yeah, and he's going to play a ton of snaps in this game because I mean, with Lloyd's injury, I can't imagine he's back this week with a hamstring. They're going to be cautious. It's his second injury at camp. He's not going to be back. Dylan will play, and he'll probably get more than the 7 snaps he just got against the Browns. But maybe they hold him back a little bit too. We're going to see a lot of Emmanuel Wilson. So yeah, he's got another chance to make an impression on the Packers or another team. Who knows? But yeah, that's going to heat up. And I want to bring up too. I think it's interesting that they've already come out and said they're not playing the starters. They're going to, the practice is going to be basically the preseason game for the starters. Because it brings up a scenario next week when they play Baltimore. They're doing the same thing. They haven't said what they're doing as far as the starters go, but they have a practice with Baltimore and then the game. Do they then decide, you know what, we did it against Denver, we're going to do it against the Ravens? That would mean you're holding your starters out for the rest of preseason. There's a week in between the preseason games and the regular season, so now you're talking like almost a month in between real football, and your starters on offense played 3 snaps. Is that enough? Is that enough action for them? I mean, I know the joint practices are important, and that's great and all, but do you really want them going down to Brazil having played 3 snaps in the preseason?
Yeah, I don't think that – I don't know. I think it depends on how they structure the joint practice. I mean, if you're getting live pops, you're getting live pops, and that's really the most important part in my opinion when you're competing. I think you do it this week, it makes sense, especially because you're trying to get as much snaps to make evaluations on guys that are competing for a roster spot. I think next week you have to give your starters some, maybe not even like a lot of meaningful snaps, but probably like 2 drives. Like get a little bit of a rhythm in the game. Get out there, get on the field, see something, and want to go back in to adjust to it, whatever it may be. Or at least carry out whatever you've scripted, something like that. And that, who knows what they'll do at this point. I defer to LaFleur, man. He's done an incredible job leading this team through a lot of turbulent times. So yeah, I mean, if he sees it as not needing to start his guys for a few weeks until Brazil, okay, I'll trust you. I don't want to see that. I think just again, what from my experience as a player, I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to get some snaps in, maybe not a full game or a full quarter even, but yeah, like definitely want to get out there and get running around, get some hits in, just sort of knock off that adrenaline a little bit. But who knows? These are big strategic decisions. That's why these guys make the big bucks, right?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think they need to play against the Ravens at least a little bit, maybe put them out there for a quarter. But, I mean, I go back to 21 and 22 where they didn't play their starters, and week 1 they came out, and both times they got smoked. Like
Totally different personalities, to be fair.
But last year they played the starters and they came out and they beat the Bears. I mean, they always beat the Bears, but they beat the Bears.
And they did it decisively. They looked prepared.
Yes. Maybe it had nothing to do with it. Who knows? There's no perfect way to do it.
Never know.
We see teams handle it different ways all the time. Who knows? But I don't know. I just feel like they're still a young team, and that's a lot of time in between playing games. I know they get a lot out of joint practices, and I like that they do joint practices, but there's something about an actual game too. And, you're basically passing on some extra reps for your guys by not playing them in those games. So I think they at least need to get them into the game against Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what they do. I think they will. But yeah, we'll see what they do with that. And then we've attracted a Vikings fan in the comment section. Alex Ramos. Thank you for jumping in, Alex. I'll say that we always appreciate. And anybody who wants to come in and hang out, we want you to be here. But no, not go Vikings. We're going to put that comment away. No, no Vikings.
Did they put something in their trophy case yet? Because the rookie quarterback looked okay.
There's a lot of dust in there. They have a lot of dust in there.
There's a lot of room.
Decades worth of dust.
Empty, but I guess the J.J. McCarthy made a couple nice throws, and
I saw some tape of him not making nice throws too. So
right, but I think he's going in the Hall of Fame, the same class as Caleb Williams.
Really? He's in the Hall of Fame? Wow, that was fast.
Well, Caleb Williams is. He's already.
Of course, that's a given. He is a generational talent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make good throws in practice, you make it to the Hall of Fame. What can we say? No. In all fun, we welcome the Vikings and the Bears fans, and in fact, I know there's a couple of Bears trolls out there on Twitter that like having a little bit of fun. So, we're all for it, all good fun. That's why we're here. That's why we're fans. We like to bicker at each other, but we'll happily remind you how many trophies you don't have. Let's see here. Matthew jumped back in. He's got a question. He says, doesn't joint practice let the other teams know who the weapons are? Yeah, so that's a good question, Matthew. I feel like that's a risk in some of the poker that's being played with these joint practices. You certainly don't want to tip any sort of strategic information if you don't have to. So I think what it comes down to a lot for these things is more just kind of fundamental head-to-head competition. So you're not giving away a lot of your strategic ideas or what you might do in play calling situations or, trick plays you might have cooked up, stuff like that. You're just giving these guys somebody who's not their teammate that they've been hitting for the last 4 weeks, somebody else to hit, a different colored jersey. And a lot of times it introduces a different kind of mental situation for the athletes too, right? Like we were talking about Clifford, he's kind of a gamer. There's something about competing against somebody else that can bring something out of these guys, and you want to see that if you can before you have to make a decision about cutting them. So that's what I think they're looking for. That's a good question, though.
Yeah, and with the joint practices, I mean, think of it this way. Only the Broncos and the Packers are seeing the film on those joint practices.
Right.
You play a preseason game, everybody's going to have access to it and can have access to it. So
good point.
Maybe you're able to hide some things more by doing the joint practice. You're still doing a preseason game, but you're able to hide more or do more in the joint practice that you're not going to do in the game.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You're not having to share that film with everybody else. Whereas, when you put it on a game film, everybody gets it. So, there might be some stuff that they can do in the joint practice against the Broncos starters and some things they can test out. And, I imagine the coaches probably have an exchange beforehand about that. Like, what do you want to accomplish? Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Hey, we need to see this guy go against this look. Can you give us that? There's probably some stuff like that, I would imagine. That's sort of what the intended spirit is for these things. Let's get a little bit of a custom look at things without it being our guys. Again, the same guys that you've been going against for the last 3 to 4 weeks. That gets old real quick, but that's a fair question. I feel like some people probably are curious about that. Like, why would you agree to a joint practice? Is that not kind of tipping your hand and giving away information you'd rather not give away? And I think the coaches manage that pretty well so that they don't have to give away too much that they don't want to. And then we got Jody jumping in. Jody Moncrief. Thanks for jumping in with us, Jody. Bo Nix is the real deal. Well, that's what. Why is his name escaping me? The coach over there,
Sean Payton.
Peyton. Yeah, that's what Peyton thinks. He thinks he's definitely the real deal. So we're gonna find out because he's. I mean, assuming that the starters are in the practice, he'll have to go against Jair and the pass rushers. He's gonna have a day with Rashawn Gary. So we'll see. In some ways, you actually probably do get more quality reps from that than you would from a preseason game where you don't want to play your starters very much. Yeah, like this, where they went out there, they played 3 plays against the Browns, and then they shut it down. If you have a joint practice leading up to that, your starters are probably going to get 25, 30 reps against their starters, and they're controlled reps, so you don't have to worry too much about injury, or as much, I should say, about injuries. But,
I highly doubt they're going to be tackling because Packers don't tackle. So, in camp, though they don't, their defense hasn't tackled too well in regular season games either. But, so I can't see them like tackling, taking guys to the ground, but it's still quality reps.
Whereas in a game, you obviously have to tackle. There is a lot less control. You've got guys out there trying to prove themselves against veterans who maybe are not as much. I think overall, I like the joint practices. I personally think that our coaches get a lot from that, being able to see how other coaches operate with their teams and their players. I think there's probably some drill idea swap going on. There's a lot of stuff like that. So I'm a fan. I think that there's definitely a fair case to be made against them. We know that the last guy that threw the football for the Packers didn't like them. I get it, especially if you're an older guy. But I do. I think that the joint practices give you a much better look at the things that you need to look at. You need to see a guy in this situation or that situation. Gives you the control to do that against some higher competition.
And it seems like it's the way the league's going. So many teams do them. So many teams do them with multiple teams. Like it's, they took away a preseason game. Eventually, they're probably going to take away another one when they go to 18 games. So instead of those reps that you're not going to get in preseason games, let's have a joint practice and do it against another team, a different look and all that. So, I think it's definitely valuable as long as you're not having fights break out and all that nonsense that we've, at times seen in the past. And I think that's why the Packers are limiting to just one practice against Denver and one against Baltimore, because they don't want to have that, those fights that seem to happen on the second day.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably – we talked about that last time too. Like, hey, maybe the second day is not necessary. Yeah. And then ours jumping in to defend Alex a little bit. Alex is fine, the Vikings fan. He'll need something to do by week 5 when their season's over anyway. And I agree with you there, R. Yeah, Alex, you're welcome. Come on in, man. We'll talk some crap about the Vikings for you. But yeah, overall, I'm excited to see how this looks. The Broncos have some good players. It'll be good to see how our guys match up against them. Some matchups that might be fun to watch. They got Surtain Jr. over there at DB. He is a really good DB. Yeah. So seeing him against some of our receivers, I think that'll be a fun little test to watch if we can get some one-on-ones, hopefully. But yeah, I think if I had to pick one battle, I'm looking forward to seeing who wins the running back 2 job for us. That's going to be a hot battle.
And I think this game you're gonna see a lot of Wilson, probably a decent amount of Dillon too. So yeah, this is the game that might decide it in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. So what other things you got, man? Anything else you're excited about this week? Any other hot rumors going on around?
No other hot rumors, just excited that we have real football to talk about, even though it's preseason, so it's not quite real football, but it's still football. And we're another week closer to the season opener, less than a month now.
Hell yeah, man. I cannot wait. Brazil. Mm-hmm. Friday night football. That is going to be fun. But yes, so we had a good week here against the Browns. It was fun to watch, fun to get a win. Fun to see Dontavian Wicks come in for one snap, drop a big bomb, exit, mic drop. What a gangster. That guy's going to have himself a hell of a season. And then there's a lot left to watch in the preseason, guys. So I hope you're not bored at this point, because things are just getting started. We're just starting to have some fun.
Yeah, some really good battles. And I see R jumping in there. He wants to see Malik Heath get 8 targets this week. So, I mean, he's probably going to play a lot with the starters not playing. So you're going to see we're going to see a lot of Malik Heath. We're going to see a lot of Grant DeBose this week. And probably Bo Melton, Samari Torre, those kind of guys. So, yeah, the battle for number 5 and 6 at receiver, it's going to be.
It is the hottest in the league.
It's the hottest for 5th and 6th receivers in the league. But yeah, those guys are going to play a lot. They're going to be the starters in the game this week.
Absolutely, and we'll see what that leads to. But Malik, he's a bully. I want to see him stay in there. I want to see him keep being a bully. So if he doesn't get the targets, I want to see that run blocking grade just go straight up. He should be the top, be elite. That's what we want to see. But most of all, we want to see all you guys come back next week with us on the Packers Weekly Podcast. Next Monday night at 9:30 Central PM. We're going to be going over Week 2, going over this Broncos matchup, see what we see. What did we like? What did we not like? What do y'all think? Who's going to make the team? Who's not making the team? Who are we firing? We haven't even talked about the kicking competition. Who's going to get fired in that? We got to talk about that next week. There's plenty of good stuff swirling around there. But no, thank y'all for hanging out with us this week on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. Check us out on YouTube, Twix, which is Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Facebook, Instagram. Spike that like button for us. That is a big deal. Helps us out. Just one little tiny click right there, just inches away. Go ahead and grab that. And then go subscribe to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. That also would do us a great service. And we will see y'all next week, Packers fans. Go, Pack, go!